Panda lies flat on the floor, chewing bamboo like it's the only job he ever wanted. His mother moves around the house, cleaning with a face that says she's had enough of this lazy fluffball. She tells him to think about his future and at least get a part-time job. Panda shrugs it off, claiming he's too busy being lazy. That's all it takes for Panda Mama to swing the vacuum cleaner at him. To fake some effort, Panda drags himself into a convenience store. Instead of looking for work, he stocks up on bamboo snacks and kills time flipping through part-time job magazines. He calls up a few places about roles like designer or interior coordinator, but with zero skills to back it up, he gets shut down instantly. When Panda Mama checks on him again, she finds the same useless scene, so the vacuum comes out once more and she blasts him without hesitation. Panda soaks outside, spotting a yellow butterfly tangled in string. He tries to free it, but the butterfly slips away, forcing him into a half-hearted chase that ends at Polar Bear Cafe. Inside, Polar Bear greets him with an easy smile, frees the butterfly in seconds, and asks if Panda wants to eat. Hungry as ever, Panda asks for bamboo, but since the cafe doesn't serve it, he settles for iced coffee and chills in the cozy atmosphere. Soon Penguin walks in, casually asks about point cards and orders a cafe mocha. Polar Bear drops his usual puns. Penguin looks unimpressed, and the chat shifts to the cafe needing a part-timer. Hearing that, Panda suddenly perks up like his lazy life just gets handed a lifeline. Several animals, including badger, tortoise, mandrill, anteater, and even Panda himself, line up for interviews, but none prove suitable. Eventually, Sloth appears with an unusual request, but Sasako, a capable human girl, is chosen for the job instead. Back home, Panda tells his mother about discovering the cafe and is surprised to learn it sits right behind their house. Falling into bad habits, he phones Polar Bear Cafe and asks if they can deliver food. As he sprawls across the floor begging for delivery, his exasperated mother storms in and once again uses her trusty vacuum on him. Panda drags himself back to the cafe looking messy and exhausted. Sasako politely greets him and asks for his order, watching Penguin coolly request the usual. Panda imitates him but receives curry rice instead, leaving him disappointed. He asks once more for bamboo, but it's still unavailable, so he settles for iced coffee. Polar Bear, with his usual bad timing humor, suggests a tuna boat job, while Penguin, far more serious, tells Panda to try the zoo. Panda finally gives in and goes for it. At the zoo, he sits through an interview with Handa the zookeeper. When Handa offers him roles like gorilla or Asian black bear, Panda puffs up with pride and picks the panda role, convinced it's his true calling. He meets full-time Panda, the dependable worker who actually takes the job seriously, and stumbles into his own first day. The visitors expect a show, so Panda flops around with a slide and a tire, running out of energy faster than a phone at 2%. As expected, he spends most of the day snoozing while Handa's patience thins by the minute. After his so-called shift, Panda drags himself back to Polar Bear Cafe and joins Llama, Koala, and Mandrill at a table. They talk about his first day, while Panda acts like he's survived hard labor instead of a nap session. He flips open the menu again and notices Polar Bear has added bamboo just for him. That small gesture lights him up, and he happily orders it, finally feeling like life has thrown him a win. At the panda's house, everyone wakes up early and gathers in the yard to practice Tai Chi. His grandfather is a master of Chinese martial arts. As soon as they are done with Tai Chi, they eat breakfast together. But since Panda is sleeping till late and being lazy, he prompts his mother to attack him with the vacuum cleaner again. After that, Panda, Penguin, and Llama spend a lazy afternoon at Polar Bear's Cafe, where the conversation drifts toward imagining what it would be like if each of them ran a cafe of their own. Panda is the first to describe his dream, picturing a mellow place with a retro feel. In his vision, the cafe has Chinese windows, shelves filled with his panda-themed collection, and a menu entirely made from bamboo dishes. Excited by the idea, he convinces the others to try it out in real life. They decorate Polar Bear's Cafe with bamboo, fill the space with panda trinkets, and even dress in panda costumes. When Polar Bear walks in, he takes one glance at the chaos and immediately orders everything to be restored to normal. Not wanting to be left behind, Penguin presents his own vision next. He imagines a Japanese-style cafe centered on seafood and alcohol. Guests would dine on the freshest fish of the season, perfectly paired with steak he handpicks himself. To make it unique, he adds an aquarium running through the middle of the cafe, where customers could decide the fish they wanted to eat. Panda dismisses it as more of a sushi restaurant than a cafe. Sasako lightly recommends including coffee, but Penguin explains that he would be far too busy chasing down the best fish. Fired up, he persuades the others to help him remodel the cafe into his dream. Before long, Polar Bear finds the room transformed with Japanese wall decor, an aquarium counter, and the staff dressed as Penguin sushi chefs. As expected, Polar Bear immediately asks them to change everything back again. Llama then jumps in with his idea, explaining that his cafe would be like a cat cafe, but with llamas. Guests could walk, groom, and spend time with the llamas however they liked. He even suggests that customers could decide which llama they wanted to bring out, which Penguin interprets as unappealing and a little strange. Curious, they turn to Polar Bear for his opinion, and he actually prefers llama's concept over the others. When Sasako offers her own cafe idea, the animals brush her off, ignoring her completely while they return to arguing over whose plan is best. Soon after, the group and other regulars gather to enjoy the cherry blossoms. They settle under the trees with food and drinks, while Sloth volunteers to head to the convenience store to buy more. Because of his slow pace, he takes far longer than expected. In the meantime, Penguin drinks too much and quickly becomes drunk, energized by the alcohol. He begins suggesting extra activities like dancing and singing, eager to keep the party lively. Polar Bear keeps the group entertained with flashy stunts, stacking glasses into a champagne tower and yanking a tablecloth from under dishes without breaking a single plate. Penguin eventually keels over and passes out, only to wake when Panda pokes fun at him. Annoyed, Penguin snaps back, starting a petty fight, even dragging Llama into it by comparing both him and Panda to corny Japanese comedians. The drinks hit harder, and Penguin drifts into sloppy rambling about a penguin he once loved. In his haze, he mistakes Panda for Penko, blurts out a half-baked proposal, and even delivers a shaky love poem like it's open mic night. Polar Bear, keeping a straight face, suggests a romantic walk, and the confused Penguin tugs Panda along. Halfway through, reality smacks him, and he realizes this is no Penko. He throws a dramatic tantrum and promptly collapses again. By the time Sloth finally shuffles back from the store, the party has long ended and the place is empty. Luckily, Polar Bear stays behind, waiting, and the two quietly take in the beauty of the blossoms together. At the cafe, Penguin sits across from Polar Bear, restless and fidgeting. Panda strolls in, plops down like he owns the place, and suddenly blurts out the one thing bothering him: nobody ever visits him at the zoo. He points out that he's always the one coming to the cafe, so it's only fair they return the favor. With his chest puffed out, he brags that they would be blown away if they saw how popular he is with visitors. That same night, he even calls Polar Bear just to hammer in the reminder, making sure Penguin is dragged into it too. The next morning, Panda shows up at the zoo for his shift. Panda greets him and explains that full-time Panda is off today. Panda lights up instantly, thrilled that all the attention is his alone. His ego inflates on the spot, convinced this is the day he finally proves he's the star attraction. Meanwhile, Polar Bear and Penguin arrive at the zoo. They plan to go straight to Panda's enclosure, but get sidetracked by an announcement about Polar Bear feeding. Penguin tries to point out that Polar Bear really shouldn't step inside, since it might send the animals into a meltdown. But Polar Bear, being Polar Bear, ignores the warning and strolls right in. Carino, one of the zookeepers, spots them immediately, tears into them with a sharp scolding, and kicks them out. Eventually, they make it to Panda's enclosure, ready to see him in action. Instead of the charming, lively Panda he promised, they find him slumped against a slide, knocked out cold like a hungover tourist. After waiting a while, they give up and leave, disappointed. Ironically, as soon as they're gone, Panda wakes up, stretching and casually asking Handa if he saw his friends. Handa, too busy with real work, hasn't noticed a damn thing, leaving Panda completely clueless about missing his big chance. Determined to make the most of the visit, Polar Bear and Penguin wander over to Seal Hall. A big sign warns that polar bears are not allowed, but the two sneak in anyway. Once inside, another zookeeper catches them in the act, scolds them, and promptly throws them out. With little choice left, they decide to return to the Panda exhibit. But once again, Panda is asleep, this time leaning lazily against a tire. Handa arrives during the moment and takes photographs of the scene, thinking they might come in handy for Panda. After roaming the zoo some more and even chatting with Llama, Polar Bear and Penguin circle back to Panda again, only to find him asleep yet another time. Later that day at the cafe, Panda confronts them angrily, asking why they didn't visit him. Penguin calmly explains that they did, but he was asleep every single time. To prove it, they even show him Handa's photos of him napping. Embarrassed, Panda wonders aloud if he really knows how to act naturally. He asks full-time Panda for advice, but his coworker is also asleep. Turning to Handa, he gets only a vague, unhelpful answer. The question follows Panda back to the cafe. He asks everyone what acting natural really means. Striking exaggerated poses, he tries to figure it out, while Penguin observes that every single pose still looks cute. Even so, Panda struggles to grasp the meaning of natural. Soon, the other animals join in the discussion. Otter admits he envies Panda since cracking shellfish leaves him with stomach pains. Koala complains about eating nothing but eucalyptus leaves every day. And Teeter wishes he could eat something other than ants. Llama laments that no one pays attention to him at all, while Tapper shares that people expect too much from him because of the rumor that tappers eat dreams. Even Sloth chimes in, saying that hanging upside down all day isn't as easy as it looks. Together, they realize that every animal has struggles no matter how others see them. When asked directly, Polar Bear admits he has problems too. Just as Penguin begins hinting at his complicated love life, the moment is ruined. Panda has fallen asleep yet again, snoring in his chair. The next day at the zoo, Panda still wonders what it means to act naturally. He tries to figure out if simply being himself is enough. Back at the cafe, Penguin reflects on the question and concludes that acting natural for Panda simply means being where he feels most at ease. But before the thought can sink in, Panda abruptly changes the subject, proudly showing off a new collection of Panda merchandise, completely ignoring the deeper meaning behind his friend's advice. At the cafe, Polar Bear quietly folds paper, carefully shaping it into a neat little origami polar bear. Penguin, both amused and curious, spots it and decides this moment deserves proof. He proudly whips out his shiny new smartphone, waving it around like it's the crown jewel of the cafe. Sasako shows interest, and Penguin jumps at the chance to show off what his phone can do. The flex falls flat when he fumbles with something as basic as zooming, forcing Polar Bear to calmly pull out his own phone and demonstrate how it actually works. Llama strolls in soon after, casually flashing his own phone, loaded with more apps than he'll ever use. This sparks a lively chat, everyone showing off the different ways they rely on their gadgets. Checking info, scrolling around, organizing schedules, or just messing with random features. In the middle of all this excitement, Panda sits in silence, looking like the only kid without a toy, feeling painfully left out. At home, he tells Panda Mama that it's a smartphone era now and insists that a hardworking panda like him cannot possibly survive without one. Panda Mama hesitates at first, but then realizes having a phone would make it easier to boss him around with errands. That settles it, and Panda finally gets his own device, dressed in a panda-themed protective case for maximum cuteness. Buzzing with pride, Panda rushes back to the cafe to flaunt his new prize. Sasako immediately notices the cover, calling it adorable, which makes Panda beam like he's just won a trophy. He starts boasting about how handy the phone is, bragging about checking the weather, pulling up maps, and snapping photos like he's some tech guru. But Panda's clumsy excitement betrays him. In a careless moment, he tosses the phone and it crashes against the wall. The Panda case cracks. Penguin reassures him that the phone is unharmed, yet Panda sulks. For him, the case was the only part that truly mattered. When Panda returns home, still upset, Panda Mama asks about his smartphone. She explains she tried calling him earlier, but the call ended up being answered by Polar Bear instead. The next day, Panda shows up at the cafe acting completely unconcerned about the previous accident. He claims he doesn't even need a smartphone anymore since the cover is broken. Polar Bear, noticing Panda's gloom, takes a moment to cheer him up by crafting an origami panda-shaped phone cover. Panda lights up once again, his mood instantly restored. But his clumsiness strikes again. He stumbles, drops the phone, and falls right on top of it, shattering the device beyond repair. While Panda wrestles with his phone troubles, a new subplot begins with Penguin. He is working toward getting his driver's license. Polar Bear casually mentions wanting to invite Miss Penko for a drive, which shocks Penguin when Llama reveals that this was written on his blog. Embarrassed, Penguin quickly makes his blog private. Still, his driving lessons continue, though he struggles badly with parallel parking. His coach is strict, but Penguin remains determined to succeed. Llama later informs Panda that Polar Bear has agreed to give Penguin some extra driving practice, sharing his own techniques. Panda, not wanting to miss out, asks to join them. The following day, Panda shows up carrying a huge bundle of bamboo, but Llama cannot make it since he has work at the zoo. Inside the car, Penguin admires Polar Bear's smooth driving skills. During the trip, Panda greets Hayashi, and soon his hunger gets the better of him. They stop at a cafe, but to his disappointment, there's no bamboo grass on the menu. They leave, return again, and after several failed visits, they finally manage to place an order. Satisfied, they continue their outing. Polar Bear later demonstrates proper parallel parking for Penguin. As this happens, Sasako happens to pass by and Polar Bear kindly offers her some donuts. After that, both Panda and Penguin start dozing off in the car. Penguin denies being tired, but eventually drifts into a dream of driving alongside Miss Penko, with flying fish soaring over the ocean. Their peaceful drive suddenly shifts when one of the car's tires goes flat. Panda and Penguin panic instantly, but Polar Bear remains calm, teaching them how to handle the situation. By the end, Penguin feels both relieved and amused. He pulls out his smartphone and captures a photo of the polar bear, appreciating the moment. At Polar Bear Cafe, Panda looks more stressed than usual. He explains that he has to work an entire week at the zoo because full-time Panda is off to China for a family wedding. The idea of waking up early every single day already drains him, and he doubts he can survive it. Penguin listens and tells him not to stress about waking up, but to think about how awful morning trains are with crowds of people rushing to work. Panda completely misses the point and instead gets excited. convinced this will be a fun new adventure. Without wasting a second, he bolts out of the cafe, pumped with misplaced enthusiasm. The next morning, Panda actually wakes up early for once and heads to work. On the way, he spots Hayashi but doesn't even slow down, too focused on making it to the station. The moment he arrives, he gets swallowed by the sea of commuters piling into the train. Confused, he asks a passenger where the Panda car is, only to be told such a thing doesn't exist. Now stuck, he squeezes himself into a cramped corner of the human train, clinging on for dear life. An announcement warns of shaky tracks ahead, and Panda nearly topples over as the train rattles along. By the time he finally stumbles into the zoo, he is completely wrecked. Panda shows up with food, only to find Panda already collapsed on the ground, proving once again that this so-called hardworking Panda can't handle even the warm-up. He remarks that he understands how difficult morning work can be but reminds Panda of his promise to entertain the visitors. Panda, however, insists that Handa should take over since he is already in the perfect Panda shape. Handa briefly imagines himself performing as Panda but quickly shakes the idea off. He leaves the food for Panda and walks away. Panda slowly eats, whispering that even his appetite feels weaker now that he dreads the packed morning train. At that moment, the man comes holding flowers and a note from Rin Rin, Panda's fan. Panda is touched by this unexpected gift, encouraged. He gets back on his feet with renewed energy and entertains the audience wholeheartedly. From that day onward, Panda starts working diligently at the zoo, showing up every morning and performing with enthusiasm. He believes Rin Rin is watching him every single day. Each day he receives flowers and a note, which he proudly brings home. Handa himself is surprised by Panda's sudden dedication and begins wondering what could have sparked such motivation. After a week of non-stop effort, Panda returns to the cafe looking tired, dirty, and completely drained. Penguin expresses how impressed he is by Panda's hard work, but also advises him to take a break since he looks so worn out. Panda agrees, reasoning that he doesn't want Rin Rin to see him in such a state. Later that night, he sits alone at home, gazing at the flowers and rereading every note from Rin Rin. Feeling deeply loved, he drifts into sleep. The next morning, Panda prepares to head back to work, but Hayashi stops him. He tells Panda that his full-time job ends today, and that he should return to being part-time. Then, he shows Panda the photographs he had taken during the week. Panda asks about Rin Rin, only to hear the shocking truth. Rin Rin is none other than Hayashi himself, who has been Panda's secret admirer all along because of his love for pandas. Panda bursts into tears, overwhelmed by the revelation, and runs away crying. Later, he returns to the cafe, where Sasako mentions that Polar Bear is planning a special menu. Penguin shows up in a sour mood, confessing that he failed his driving test again because of his strict coach. He laments that, at this rate, he will never be able to take Penko on a driving date. Meanwhile, Polar Bear and Sasako continue brainstorming, deciding on parfait as their special item. Later, Polar Bear visits a bookstore to browse recipe books and also discusses mandrill, llama tortoise, and anteater for their parfait suggestions. None of their ideas impress him. Panda then proposes a bamboo parfait, and Penguin contributes his own idea, but Polar Bear remains unconvinced. Finally, Sasako presents the concept of a trio parfait featuring Panda, Penguin, and Polar Bear themselves. Everyone loves the idea. 2 customers sample the test parfait and enjoy it, confirming its success. A few days later, Penguin returns to the cafe disappointed after failing his driving test yet again. To his surprise, the cafe is bustling with more customers than usual. Panda informs him that the new special menu has become a hit. At the Polar Bear Cafe, Panda walks in looking upset and covered in dirt. Polar Bear, as usual, offers him his regular oversized serving, but Panda surprises everyone by choosing a normal one this time. He explains that he has started dieting. His mind flashes back to the zoo, where he was entertaining visitors by sliding down, only to tumble so clumsily that the whole structure collapsed. Penguin grows curious and asks what kind of look Panda hopes to achieve. Panda dreams of appearing slim with long, graceful legs. However, Polar Bear remarks that he would look like a bad boy. Just then, Sasako arrives with Panda's normal serving, and the sight immediately weakens Panda's resolve. He tosses aside his diet plan and demands his usual extra-large serving instead. Polar Bear questions his commitment, but Panda casually postpones the start of his new lifestyle to tomorrow. Later at the zoo, Panda is caught napping again when Handa arrives for work. Handa reminds him that he only comes a couple of times a week, so he cannot waste the day by sleeping. He offers Panda some dumplings, but Panda refuses, insisting his diet has now officially begun. The fellow Panda admits he is also round, but doesn't mind his appearance. Panda then recalls the slide breaking under him and blames himself, but Handa reassures him it was actually weakened by termites. Trying to cheer Panda up, Handa explains the origin of the word. Panda, expecting it to mean cute, is horrified when Handa explains it comes from a word connected to fat. This revelation makes Panda imagine that when crowds chant his name at the zoo, they are secretly calling him overweight. He sinks deeper into despair, blaming his job for encouraging laziness, constant eating, and endless naps. Desperate, he pleads with Panda to bring him a fitness game, but Panda refuses and insists that entertaining visitors is also exercise. Not long after, Panda returns to find Panda still fast asleep while the audience calls out for him to wake up. Yet, when some young girls describe him as cute, Panda springs into action immediately. Panda notices that Panda only works enthusiastically when someone calls him adorable. However, when the girls admire his chubby figure and describe his heaviness as part of his cuteness, Panda feels crushed. That night, Panda sets a target weight of 130 kilograms. His mother looks on with confusion. To prove himself, Panda begins a morning walk routine and adds playful movements into his zoo performances. The audience loves the energy, and even Panda is proud to see him putting in effort. Eventually, the two check Panda's weight and celebrate as he actually reaches his goal. Panda even surprises him with a rebuilt slide, and Panda beams with pride at his accomplishment. Soon after, Panda decides to reinvent himself again. He enters the cafe wearing a mask, dark clothes, and a mysterious expression. Both Polar Bear and Penguin are baffled by the disguise. Panda explains that he wants to appear wild and strong, like a true bad guy, since he feels he lacks any edge. Polar Bear, amused, reminds him that Grizzly embodies this kind of toughness and suggests they pay him a visit. Later that night, Polar Bear escorts Panda to Grizzly's bar. The moment they step inside, Panda is overwhelmed by the rough atmosphere. To him, the place feels dangerous. When Polar Bear introduces him to Grizzly, Panda becomes nervous. His fear intensifies when a crocodile tries to scare him, but Grizzly immediately puts the reptile in its place. The crocodile, terrified, hides in a corner, which leaves Panda speechless at Grizzly's authority. Grizzly then offers Panda a drink, spiking the coffee with alcohol. Innocently, Panda gulps it down, only to faint moments later. Polar Bear quietly hoists him onto his back, thanks Grizzly, and carries Panda away. On the way home, Panda stirs awake and expresses his gratitude. Despite fainting, he feels inspired by the glimpse of wildness he experienced that night. The next morning, Panda shows up riding a tricycle, dressed in sunglasses and a hat, convinced he now looks like a true bad boy. Polar Bear watches in stunned silence, unsure what to make of Panda's latest transformation. At the cafe, where Panda curiously asks Polar Bear about the popularity period, he explains that it's a stage everyone reaches if they put in enough effort, a moment in life when admiration naturally comes their way. When Sasako walks over to their table, Panda eagerly shows her a mask, a carrot, and mentions how heavy he is in weight. Sasako looks puzzled, and Panda explains that he heard these three things are the secret to becoming popular. Sasako gently clears up the misunderstanding, pointing out that what truly makes someone popular are qualities like good looks, a sense of humor, and basic courtesy. Later at the zoo, Panda notices Hayashi surrounded by a group of admiring girls. Panda instantly concludes this must be Hayashi's popularity period. Things escalate when Hayashi accidentally bumps into Panda. The girls rush over again, now checking if Hayashi is alright. Watching this, Panda drags Panda away, insisting they need to figure out how to get him into his own popularity period. Meanwhile, Penguin arrives at the cafe in high spirits. He proudly announces to Sasako that he has received his temporary driver's license. Meanwhile, Panda and Polar Bear focus on transforming Panda's image. They begin with a makeover session, dressing Panda in different suits to boost his charm. Panda, however, takes things too far by presenting a full panda costume, suggesting it's the ultimate path to popularity since Panda himself is beloved. Polar Bear joins the fun as well, slipping into another costume, but conveniently forgetting his wallet, leaving Panda stuck with the bill. The makeover adventure continues as the trio stops at a gourmet shop. Panda ends up buying bamboo grass treats for Panda and fish for Polar Bear, clearly footing the costs while the two enjoy themselves. Next, they head to an amusement park, where Panda and Polar Bear enthusiastically dive into the rides and games, while Panda awkwardly tags along, watching them have all the fun. As evening arrives, a small group of girls approaches Panda and asks him to take a picture. Panda's eyes light up. He is certain this is the start of Panda's long-awaited popularity period, but the reality turns out different. The girls actually want photos with Panda and Polar Bear, leaving Panda behind the camera, clicking the shots instead. The next day, Penguin excitedly rushes to share the news that he has officially earned his driver's license. Panda and Sasako congratulate him warmly, and Penguin can't contain his excitement about finally taking Miss Penko on a date. But Polar Bear reminds him that driving isn't the only challenge. He also needs to keep her entertained with interesting conversation while staying confident. To prepare, Penguin decides to go on a practice date with his two friends. When Panda and Polar Bear show up for the rehearsal, they find Penguin asleep, with no arrangements. Polar Bear points out that he has already failed, forcing Penguin to restart and take things seriously. The practice begins with arranging meetings, conversations, and proper manners. They even head out for a drive together. During the drive, Panda tries to start a chat, but Penguin cuts him off, saying it's distracting. Polar Bear steps in again, explaining that he has failed the conversation test too. To push him further, Polar Bear roleplays as Miss Penko, teaching Penguin how to compliment and engage her. Through trial and error, Penguin finally manages to pass the fun conversation challenge. Their rehearsal continues at a restaurant, where Polar Bear reminds Penguin that on a real date, he should always be the one to pay. Afterwards, the group drives toward the ocean. When the atmosphere grows quiet, Polar Bear suggests using music to fill the silence. However, Penguin ends up taking the wrong path, and the drive lasts much longer than planned. He insists they will make it before sunset, but they arrive only after the sun has gone down. Despite the mistake, Penguin takes the chance to confess his feelings aloud, finally passing Polar Bear's love test. The following morning, Penguin visits Miss Penko's shop but returns to the cafe carrying only bread. He admits to Polar Bear and Panda that he decided not to go on a date yet. It's not summer, and the timing doesn't feel right. At Polar Bear Cafe, where two journalists arrive to gather material for a feature in their magazine. The young writer, Osaki Mayumi, introduces herself as a staff member of Fufura Walker Monthly. She looks around the cozy cafe and mentions their editor-in-chief who still hasn't arrived. He is the one particularly eager to cover Polar Bear Cafe for the magazine. Hearing the word magazine, Panda immediately drifts into his imagination. He envisions his face gracing the pages, wondering about the fan mail he might receive. If the journalists decide to photograph customers, he thinks, then this could be his moment of fame. Penguin, on the other hand, grows nervous. He worries about how unphotogenic he is and begins stressing about being caught on camera. Meanwhile, Osaki begins interviewing Polar Bear. She asks him how the cafe started, but before he can fully respond, their editor-in-chief finally arrives. To everyone's surprise, it is Shoebill, a bird with a stern yet quiet demeanor. He greets Polar Bear politely and Osaki interprets his short, cryptic words, noting that he finds the cafe truly wonderful. Polar Bear calmly begins sharing his story. He explains that he was born in Hudson Bay, Canada, as the youngest of triplets and the smallest among them. During a fierce snowstorm, he became separated from his family when the chunk of ice he stood on drifted away. After drifting alone for days, he was rescued by a kind fisherman who left him in the care of his parents. They ran a small seal restaurant, and as he helped them, he discovered a love for cooking. Time passed, and Polar Bear grew so large that he could no longer stay with his family. Wanting independence, he decided to open this cafe. Deep inside, he also hoped that by running a welcoming place, word might spread and one day lead him back to his family. Panda grows emotional listening to this story and ends up in tears. He asks if Polar Bear ever reunited with his family, but Polar Bear admits he never did. Shoebill then notices the cafe's flower arrangements. Sasako explains that a local flower shop handles them and also mentions the cafe's own garden where they grow herbs and vegetables for meals. Osaki continues the interview and asks about recommendations. Panda proudly suggests a large serving of bamboo grass, while Sasako points out that their pasta lunch set is especially popular. Polar Bear serves them pasta, and Shoebill silently examines it. Panda assumes he dislikes it, but to everyone's relief, Shoebill devours the dish immediately, declaring it delicious. Time skips forward, and Polar Bear later shows off a fresh copy of the magazine. Panda and Penguin eagerly flip through the pages, only to realize they aren't featured anywhere. Both are disappointed, their dreams of stardom crushed in an instant. The very next day, Panda visits the cafe again and finds Polar Bear preparing for a field trip with Grizzly. Never one to miss an adventure, Panda quickly tags along and hops into the car. On the way, he daydreams about possible destinations, picturing mountains full of bamboo or a beach with cute girls. But Polar Bear explains the truth. They are heading to the river to catch salmon. When they arrive, Grizzly shows his skills by catching a large number of fish with ease, shocking Panda with his strength and experience. The sight reminds Grizzly of his own childhood, when catching fish was a struggle. Back then, Polar Bear would laugh at his clumsy attempts, though today the two share mutual respect. While Grizzly fishes, Polar Bear sets up camp and prepares salmon for later, explaining it will be ready once Grizzly grows tired of hunting. Panda decides to try fishing but quickly loses interest. Grizzly encourages him by reminding him that he too is a bear and should learn to hunt. Polar Bear offers a bamboo shoot as a tool, sparking Panda's excitement. He throws the bamboo into the river, and Grizzly starts teaching him a lesson on hunting. But instead of focusing on the lesson, Panda simply munches on the bamboo and forgets all about hunting. Grizzly becomes frustrated, so Panda gives Grizzly a bamboo in exchange for a fish. The two try different food together while Polar Bear makes coffee at the camp. As the sun sets, the trio sits quietly by the river, enjoying the calm after their work. The next day, Back at the cafe, Polar Bear rewards both Panda and Grizzly for their efforts. He serves them a hearty plate of salmon and bamboo pasta, a perfect meal to honor the trip and the teamwork they shared. But Panda and Grizzly decide to exchange bamboo and salmon with each other. One afternoon, when Panda is returning home from the zoo, Hayashi approaches him with gifts, some panda-themed merchandise along with chocolates. Panda accepts the items but brushes him off coldly, walking away without showing much gratitude. Despite this, Hayashi quietly hopes that someday they can become friends. Soon after, he receives an order from Panda Mama, who asks him to deliver bamboo flowers. At the cafe, Panda vents about Hayashi, calling him annoying. Penguin, however, doesn't share the same opinion and remarks that Hayashi seems like a nice person, especially given his kindness toward Panda. Meanwhile, Hayashi heads over to Panda's house to deliver the bamboo flowers. Panda Mama warmly welcomes him inside and asks him to arrange the bamboo directly in Panda's room. While Hayashi carefully sets everything up, he lets his imagination wander, picturing what Panda's daily life might be like in this cozy space. Suddenly, Panda's younger sister Mei Mei enters the room with tea. She compliments Hayashi, noting how popular he is in town for both his looks and his work as a florist. Mei Mei begins chatting and playing around with Hayashi, while Panda Mama silently observes them. Later that evening, while playing hide and seek, Hayashi tries to find Mei Mei when he notices Panda's grandfather in the woods. He approaches him, but things take a turn as Grandpa reacts roughly, hitting Hayashi away. The encounter leaves Hayashi unconscious on the ground. When he eventually regains awareness, he finds himself inside Panda's room, surrounded by two energetic panda cubs. Hayashi forgets about everything else and happily plays with them, enjoying the rare chance to bond. He even refuses to accept payment for the bamboo flowers delivery. Back at the cafe, Polar Bear talks about croissants, which sparks Panda's suggestion to add bamboo leaves to the pastry. Penguin reveals that he wants to go on a date with Penko. Panda teases him, pointing out that every time Penguin returns from the Penko's bakery, he carries nothing but loads of bread. Determined, Penguin declares that he is finally going to confess his feelings. However, almost immediately after leaving, he returns nervously asking how exactly he should confess. Polar Bear and Panda try to teach him with weird examples, but Sasako cuts in and reminds him that a simple confession would be enough. Penguin becomes more anxious, so Polar Bear and Panda offer to go with him. And even though Penguin insists he wants to do this alone, the two still trail behind. Outside Penko's bakery, Penguin practices confessing but quickly grows frustrated. From behind the bushes, Panda and Polar Bear secretly watch. Penguin slumps onto a bench, disappointed in himself, but the two snap him out of his daydreams by tossing a small stone. When Penguin finally musters the courage to approach, he bumps straight into the bakery's glass door. Penko remains unaware, while Polar Bear and Panda rush to help him, carrying him away. When Penguin regains his senses, he scolds his friends for following him despite his protests. Still, with their encouragement, he tries again. This time, he enters the bakery determined. Panda and Polar Bear can't resist staring from the window as he prepares himself. Moments later, Penguin storms back out and scolds them once more for meddling. But then, after calming himself, he re-enters the bakery carrying panda buns. Finally, Penguin emerges with a wide smile and shouts that he has done it. After that, at the cafe, Sasako curiously asks what Miss Penko said. Penguin beams and shows off extra service tickets that Penko handed him, proudly explaining that the confession itself doesn't matter. What matters is that he touched her hand while receiving them. Overjoyed, he cherishes the moment so much that he refuses to wash his hands and use the tickets. At the cafe, Panda enters and as always asks for his large serving of bamboo. Once he settles down, he decides to share a story with Polar Bear and Penguin. Panda narrates that when he went to work, he greeted Carino and attempted to peek into Panda's lunchbox. Inside, he discovered something unappealing, clearly prepared by an elderly grandmother. Penguin interrupts, saying he is busy and Panda's story still hasn't reached any meaningful point. Panda defends himself, claiming he is still in the middle of the story. Panda restarts and explains how, while sitting with another panda at the zoo, he began discussing Panda's disappointing lunch. Panda overheard their conversation and found their gossip rude. Meanwhile, Panda shifts the topic and informs Panda that he has already asked Carino to arrange a group blind date for him. When Carino arrives, setting everything up, Panda quickly refuses, saying he needs to return home and clean his bathroom. Panda and the fellow panda try making cute attempts to convince him. When Carino eventually decides to cancel the date altogether, Panda reluctantly changes his mind and finally agrees to attend. Later that day after work, Panda wishes Panda luck for the evening's blind date. However, Carino receives a call and informs Panda that the date has been cancelled because his friend is unable to join. Panda tells Carino that he has come up with a backup plan. Back at Polar Bear Cafe, Panda approaches Polar Bear and asks if he is free tonight. Penguin feels hurt that Panda didn't extend the same invitation to him. When he confronts Panda about it, Panda reminds him that he previously mentioned he was too busy. That evening, Carino gathers Panda, Polar Bear, and Handa for the arranged group blind date. The four arrive at the meeting spot where three girls are waiting. Carino introduces himself first with confidence. Handa becomes nervous and introduces himself in a very formal manner. When it's Panda's turn, the girls are immediately charmed by his cuteness and grow excited. Polar Bear introduces himself as well, mentioning that he runs a cafe, which captures the girls' attention. Meanwhile, back at the cafe, Penguin vents his frustrations to Sasako, expressing his disappointment about being left out of the gathering since he secretly wanted to join. At the restaurant, Panda casually brings out a massive bundle of bamboo leaves to snack on. The girls are amazed, finding the sight both amusing and adorable, and they immediately start taking photos of him. Carino becomes nervous, warning that the restaurant staff might scold them for bringing outside food. But when the server notices Panda happily munching on bamboo, she too finds it cute and joins in by snapping her own pictures. After that, the girls ask Handa what kind of animals he usually takes care of. He explains that his primary responsibility is caring for pandas. Pulling out his phone, he begins showing them various pictures of Panda and describes what Panda is doing in each shot. He also shares random Panda facts, which finally earns him genuine interest and attention from the girls. While the group enjoys their evening, Penguin leaves the cafe and, after some wandering, eventually finds his way to the same restaurant. When he arrives, everyone is surprised by his sudden appearance. To their delight, the girls find him cute as well. Later, Penguin begins singing for them and everyone enjoys it. Meanwhile, both Panda and Handa eventually grow sleepy and doze off. The girls notice how alike the two look while resting and take more photos of them. As the night falls, the group bids farewell to the girls. Polar Bear carries a drowsy Panda on his back, offering Carino a chance to grab coffee at his cafe before heading home. Meanwhile, Penguin remains caught up in his singing, not realizing that everyone else has already left. At the cafe, Polar Bear brings out a plate of pancakes and introduces it as his latest menu item, encouraging Panda to try it. Panda eats while Sasako also tries the sample. She notices the taste feels unusually salty. Polar Bear explains that he added salmon, making it a salmon pancake. As Panda continues eating, Penguin sits nearby, visibly upset. He complains that everyone is ignoring him. Polar Bear calmly reminds him that he acknowledged his presence but wasn't sure talking to him. To ease things, he offers Penguin a salmon pancake, but Penguin refuses. He finally admits that he doesn't want food, he wants attention. He explains that his heart is broken. Earlier at the park, he spotted Miss Penko on what appeared to be a date with Tortoise. He watched them walking together, enjoying tea, feeding each other, and even sharing a boat ride. To make it worse, he overheard Miss Penko saying that she likes turtles. Shocked and envious, Penguin wonders what makes turtles so special. Sasako remarks it could be their protective shell, while Panda claims that turtles are known to live for thousands of years. Growing more distressed, Penguin complains why his mother didn't give birth to him as a tortoise, even though he knows it's impossible. Determined, he declares he will move on completely from Miss Penko. Polar Bear reassures him that he will surely find someone else. Just then, Tortoise enters the cafe. Panda stirs the situation by pointing out that Penguin's rival has arrived and asks if he intends to fight. Nervous but desperate for answers, Penguin approaches Tortoise to question him about Miss Penko. However, he fumbles and ends up saying something completely unrelated. Irritated, Polar Bear and Sasako step in and ask Tortoise directly about his relationship with Miss Penko. Tortoise explains that she invited him out simply because she likes turtles. Overwhelmed, Penguin panics, wishes them a happy life together, and storms out. That evening, Penguin stands in the same park, convincing himself that if Miss Penko prefers turtles, then he will become one. The next morning, he shows up at the cafe crawling slowly across the floor, strapped into a makeshift tortoise shell, and even speaking at a sluggish pace. Panda and Polar Bear quickly correct his misunderstanding, clarifying that Miss Penko doesn't like tortoise romantically. She only shares a hobby with him, which explains their outing together. Realizing his mistake, Penguin becomes embarrassed and quietly slips away. Later that night, Grizzly arrives to invite Polar Bear for a night out. Panda insists on joining, and the three head to a batting center. Panda immediately starts climbing around. Annoyed, Grizzly stops him. Soon after, he watches Polar Bear and Panda toss the ball around in their own unusual ways. Growing impatient, Grizzly finally demonstrates how to swing properly. His hit is caught effortlessly by Polar Bear, earning Panda's admiration. Afterward, Polar Bear decides to demonstrate his own style, holding several bats at once. Grizzly becomes even more frustrated. Finally, both bears encourage Panda to give it a try, but Panda completely misses the ball. Rather than learning the proper way, Panda and Polar Bear continue playing with the ball in their own carefree style, driving Grizzly to exasperation. The night continues as they visit a public bath. Panda notices a child scrubbing his father's back and decides to offer the same for Grizzly. However, he does it so lightly that it tickles Grizzly. Polar Bear steps in to demonstrate and accidentally presses his nails, making Grizzly yelp. After that, to wash the shampoo when Panda tries again, he alternates hot and cold water, forcing more shouts from Grizzly. Finally, they soak in the bath. Panda plays in the water with childlike excitement, splashing around. Polar Bear joins in the fun and encourages him further, which results in more antics aimed at Grizzly's frustration. After their bath, the three head to a restaurant. Grizzly orders beer while Panda happily eats dumplings. They chat and enjoy their meal together. On the way back, Grizzly carries the tired Panda on his back. Panda admits he had a wonderful time, while Grizzly remarks that he doesn't mind carrying him again next time. At Polar Bear Cafe, Panda drags himself in with his usual sluggish attitude. He complains that he doesn't feel like going to work, since the rainy season has brought fewer visitors to the zoo. Penguin, unimpressed, remarks that Panda is exaggerating, since his job mostly involves lying around. Polar Bear, amused by the exchange, admits that he wouldn't mind having a similar job, spending the day resting while still being admired. At the zoo, Panda and his fellow panda are already in full lazy mode. Handa arrives and notices a table placed in their area. When he questions it, the fellow panda explains that it was hard to bring there without anyone noticing. He then offers Handa a cup of bamboo tea, claiming it helps with weight loss. Handa gives it a try, only to immediately spit it out, clearly disgusted. Irritated, he orders the pandas to clean up the mess. Later, Panda wakes from a nap and asks his fellow panda how long they've been at work. When he hears it has only been 30 minutes, he sighs and recalls a dream where he was performing in a grand New Year's concert. The two pandas decide to entertain themselves by playing together. The fellow panda even shows off his collection of plastic models hidden away in a bush. But soon the rain begins to pour, so both pandas go inside. Feeling bored, Panda calls Polar Bear to complain, but Polar Bear quickly ends the call, reminding he's busy managing the cafe. Handa soon storms in, frustrated with the pandas for slacking off. When a group of girls finally arrives at the panda enclosure, both pandas light up and rush to offer extra service, since these are their first visitors of the day. But in their enthusiasm, they bump into each other, tumble over, and collapse in an embarrassing mess. Later on, Panda visits Polar Bear Cafe again. This time he wonders aloud how to pass free time when there's nothing to do. Sasako shares that she enjoys wandering through the city and exploring its sights. Other regulars join in, each describing their own favorite way to pass the time. That night, when Polar Bear announces closing time, Panda realizes how quickly time flies at the cafe and suddenly comes up with an idea. The next day, he and the other animals set up their own makeshift cafe at the panda enclosure. Of course, Handa catches them and scolds them immediately. The following day, the rain continues. At the cafe, Polar Bear and Sasako talk about the melancholic weather. Meanwhile, Panda is late for work again, forcing Handa to call him. At the zoo, Handa overhears Panda and the fellow panda teasing about his personal life. They remark how all the visitors today are couples sharing umbrellas. They even point out that Handa might be more motivated in his work if he had one. Handa brushes off the remark by declaring that all the animals in the zoo are like his other half. Panda reminds him that no matter how much he loves animals, he can't marry them. The fellow panda adds that Handa should think carefully if he's all right with never having a girlfriend at all. The remark startles Handa, and he ends up sitting with the pandas, reflecting on his age and how he doesn't even have a girlfriend. The pandas cheer him up, offering encouragement in their own way. Later that night at Polar Bear Cafe, everyone gathers as usual. Meanwhile, Handa continues working late at the zoo. Carino stops by and informs him that the girls from a recent group date want to meet him again, so he will make some arrangements. After Carino leaves, Handa keeps working and then receives a call from Panda, who requests him to drop his phone at the Polar Bear Cafe. Despite the pouring rain, Handa rushes over to the cafe. After reaching there, he hands Panda his phone. Exhausted, he decides to rest for a while at the cafe. Sitting outside, Sasako notices him nodding off. By evening, Handa wakes up to find himself covered with a blanket. Sasako gently serves him tea prepared by Polar Bear, and together they enjoy the quiet, refreshing view after the rain. Panda is wandering along the path when he discovers bamboo grass scattered around. As expected, he begins munching away while following the trail. When he turns a corner, he stumbles upon Polar Bear and Sasako, who are carrying bundles of bamboo grass. Curious, Panda wonders if they are throwing a bamboo grass party. But Sasako explains that the grass isn't for eating. It's for decorations used in the Tanabata festival, a summer celebration that only comes once a year. Later at the cafe, Penguin tries to tell Panda about the meaning of Tanabata, but Panda barely listens, too focused on chewing bamboo grass. Meanwhile, Polar Bear patiently explains that the tradition involves decorating bamboo with paper and hanging colorful strips with wishes. Panda observes Sasako cutting paper into shapes for decorations. Excited, he insists on trying it himself. At that moment, Panda arrives at the cafe. Sasako serves him coffee with her usual kindness. She casually wonders if he has a day off from the zoo, since he has been visiting the cafe so often lately. Panda becomes flustered and struggles to respond, hiding his nervousness. As Sasako shows Panda how to fold paper into the shape of a panda, Panda watches her closely, unable to take his eyes off her. A little later, Sasako hands out colorful strips of paper to Panda and Penguin so they can write their wishes for the festival. Penguin instantly grows serious and demands 10 more strips, determined to write down his overflowing feelings for Miss Penko. Panda argues that it isn't fair, but before he can press the point, Polar Bear asks for 20 strips himself. Sasako calmly explains that tradition allows just one wish per person, leaving both Penguin and Polar Bear disappointed. She also gives a strip to Panda. He freezes for a moment, thinking about writing that he wishes for a wife. But reality sinks in. Before having a wife, he first needs a girlfriend. As Sasako continues serving customers with a gentle smile, Panda admires her and quietly admits to himself how cute she is. Unfortunately, Panda overhears his words and immediately seizes the chance to tease him. He tries to force Panda to repeat it and nearly exposes him to Sasako, but Panda rushes to stop him. Still curious, Panda later asks Sasako if she would like a man who takes care of animals, especially pandas. Sasako looks puzzled, not realizing what Panda is getting at. Panda grows tense and quickly interrupts before Panda can reveal more. Back at the zoo, Panda chats with his fellow panda about what he witnessed between Panda and Sasako. His friend offers advice, encouraging Panda to tell Panda to be more assertive in love. After finishing work, Panda brings this advice straight to Panda, urging him to take action if he truly likes Sasako. That evening, everyone gathers at the cafe. Panda and Panda arrive together, and Panda decides it is time to hang their wishes on the bamboo tree. One by one, the group shares their written hopes. Polar Bear wishes for global warming to stop. Penguin wishes for Miss Penko to finally confess her love to him. Sasako wishes for more customers to come to the cafe, while Panda writes that he wants a girlfriend. Other animals join in too. Llama wishes for world peace, while Tortoise dreams of riding a bike someday. Amid all the excitement, Panda realizes he forgot to write anything on his strip. He hesitates, struggling to come up with an idea. Then he notices Panda and Sasako standing close together, the air between them filled with quiet warmth. Then, Panda writes down a heartfelt wish that Panda's wish may come true. When the tree is finally decorated, everyone steps in to admire it. Strips of colorful paper sway gently in the breeze, carrying each person's wish. Under the cool air of the festival night, everyone enjoys the moment together, appreciating the beauty of shared wishes. At the Polar Bear Cafe, Panda slumps over the counter, complaining about his boring job at the zoo. Even if he chews bamboo grass slowly, time refuses to pass, and he even blames his job for his weight gain. Penguin, watching him eating, remarks if Panda is sure his job is the only reason for his weight gain. He points out that Panda only works 2 days a week and suggests he should try working every day. But Panda refuses, insisting he should only work 1 day instead. Polar Bear enters, carrying his usual calm presence, and remarks that his own routine is so packed he dreams of having free time. Hearing Panda's complaints gives him an idea. He proposes that they exchange roles. He will go to the zoo disguised as Panda while Panda will handle the cafe. Penguin immediately worries this plan will backfire, but Panda is delighted, convinced it is the best solution ever. The next day, Polar Bear shows up at the zoo in a panda disguise. His size and movements are odd, and Panda and Carino quickly recognize him. They rush to stop him, but Carino reminds Panda that the full-time panda is actually on paid leave today. That means they have no choice. In a panic, Panda reluctantly allows Polar Bear to fill in, begging him not to make his act too obvious. Inside the panda enclosure, visitors begin watching the panda suspiciously. Hayashi even arrives with flowers but takes one look at the strange panda, assumes he is sick with fever, and quickly leaves. The audience continues to murmur, doubting if it is truly a panda they are looking at. Penguin, too curious to stay away, sneaks to the zoo to check on the situation. He watches nervously as Polar Bear casually grabs bamboo grass in one hand and a wheel in the other, instantly convincing the audience that everything is fine. Their doubts disappear, and soon Polar Bear decides to entertain them further. Instead of simply eating and lying around, he starts showing off surprising tricks. He rolls around, plays with the wheel, and even plays hockey in the enclosure. The visitors are thrilled, clapping and laughing at the spectacle. Penguin panics on the sidelines, fearing this is going to end in disaster, but the crowd only grows larger. To Hans and Carino's shock, the panda merchandise section is also crowded. Meanwhile, back at the cafe, Panda attempts to take Polar Bear's place, but his lazy attitude and clumsy efforts fail miserably. When the customers ask about Polar Bear, Sasako tells them he is on a day off. Later, the three friends Polar Bear, Panda, and Penguin decide to relax together at the beach. Some women surround Panda and he claims he is famous. When he watches Polar Bear surrounded with girls instead, he becomes jealous. After that, each spends the time in their own way. Panda immediately curls up on the sand and takes a nap, while Penguin tries his luck catching fish in the sea. Meanwhile, Polar Bear, full of energy, dives into the sea for scuba adventures. When they reunite, they paddle small boats out onto the water. Penguin struggles to keep up, so Polar Bear patiently teaches him how to row properly. Panda, of course, remains half asleep on the boat, enjoying the rocking waves. The day drifts and Panda naps again under the umbrella, while Penguin cooks fresh fish and Polar Bear strums a guitar by the shore. When Panda naps, Polar Bear and Penguin make funny sand bodies around him. Their fun continues with a watermelon smashing game. Blindfolded, they take turns trying to hit the fruit. After playing with the watermelon, they eat some delicious food, and then move on to shaved ice, cooling down under the summer heat. As the sun sets, the friends sit together, watching the glowing horizon. They light sparklers, enjoying the gentle sparks in the night breeze. Eventually, they board a train for home. Exhausted from their long day, all three fall fast asleep. But when they wake up, they realize they have missed their stop. With no other option, they spend the night at the last station, peacefully curled up together. Panda walks his way through tall, overgrown grass on his path to the cafe. By the time he arrives, he complains that he got lost because of the heavy grass. At once, Penguin takes the situation seriously and begins cutting the weeds around the cafe. Polar Bear, however, relaxes nearby sipping a cool cup of mint iced tea. As Penguin works, Llama prepares to leave. Penguin tries to involve him in the weeding, but Llama thinks Penguin is offering him to eat grass. He explains he's already full and worries his stomach might burst. Soon Panda reappears, holding a strange-shaped rock he wants to show off. Sasako also joins in, presenting a clay figure she has found. Everyone becomes distracted admiring the clay figure, and Penguin feels frustrated that no one else seems serious about the weeding. Just when he feels completely ignored, Sloth appears, moving at his slow pace, and begins helping Penguin. Later, Panda enjoys the comfort of air conditioning at home, while Penguin visits him, insisting he must come back to the cafe to help with the work. When the two arrive, Penguin suddenly notices smoke rising from the yard. Panicked, he assumes there is a fire, but it turns out Polar Bear and Llama are having a barbecue together. Seeing how relaxed everyone is while he struggles to take the weeding seriously, Penguin collapses in exhaustion. When he wakes up beneath a tree, Polar Bear and Llama are casually playing hockey nearby. Penguin feels disheartened that no one takes his effort seriously. Sasako approaches and reassures him that part of the weeding has already been completed. Polar Bear apologizes and offers him another refreshing mint tea. Work resumes, with Sasako directing Panda and Llama to weed another section, and Penguin joining in again. But Polar Bear quickly decides to call Grizzly for help. Grizzly storms in like a whirlwind, cutting through the overgrown grass with ferocity. Once finished, he devours some fish and departs as suddenly as he arrived, leaving everyone stunned by his intensity. With the yard finally clear, Polar Bear thanks everyone by preparing food and drinks. The group enjoys a pleasant evening together, relieved after the exhausting day. Time passes, and Penguin begins focusing on a different concern. One day, as Panda and Penguin arrive at the cafe, Sasako teases Penguin about asking Miss Penko out during the summer. Penguin clarifies that he never said this particular summer, it could be any summer. But with encouragement from everyone around him, he finally decides to gather the courage to confess his feelings. He admits he is ready to at least learn her real name, though he has been calling her Miss Penko by himself all this time. Determined, Penguin heads to Penko's bakery. He waits patiently until the last customer leaves, standing alone in front of the counter. His heart races as he struggles with his words. Miss Penko acknowledges his enthusiasm for bread and gives him some bread. Before leaving, Penguin shows courage, confesses his feelings, and asks her out on a date. Back at the cafe, a week passes. Sasako mentions that Penguin has been visiting the Penko every single day, continuing to ask her out. Finally, the big news comes. Penguin announces at the cafe that Miss Penko accepts his invitation. The next day, Penguin arrives for his long-awaited date, but things quickly spiral out of control. Instead of meeting the one Miss Penko he knows, he is suddenly surrounded by several Miss Penguin from the bakery, all resembling the same person in his eyes. He realizes, to his horror, that he has been asking each of them out at different times, mistaking them all for the same Miss Penko. Chaos erupts as the group of misses grows angry and chases him down. Later, Penguin returns to the cafe battered and embarrassed, explaining what happened. Polar Bear clarifies the situation. Each of the Miss Penguin works at the bakery in shifts, which is why Penguin never realized they were different people. At the Grizzly cafe, an otter is enjoying his meal. In a casual tone, he mentions that he once ate an entire polar bear. Grizzly, who is listening nearby, immediately pictures his old friend polar bear being devoured and feels a chill down his spine. Suspicious, he asks if the otter managed such a feat alone. The otter calmly explains that his entire group shared the polar bear. Grizzly's imagination runs wild again, this time picturing a gang of otters feasting on polar bear. The thought shakes him deeply. Furious and terrified, he abandons the cafe, jumps on his bike, and speeds away. Earlier that day, Panda strolls into Polar Bear Cafe and notices the otter dining there as well. The otter is happily eating a new polar bear-themed dish. Sasako then serves Panda the same dish, and Panda finds it surprisingly delicious. While Panda enjoys the new recipe, Grizzly later returns to the cafe at night. Peering through the window, he sees Sasako crying inside due to spices in one of the polar bear recipes. Misinterpreting the sight, he becomes convinced that polar bear has actually been eaten. The belief crushes him, and he is left speechless in shock. Alone in the park, Grizzly reflects on his childhood memories with polar bear. He remembers how the two of them always stuck together, and how polar bear's troubling nature often led to Grizzly ending up in trouble. These nostalgic memories bring tears to his eyes. Overwhelmed with emotion, he gets on his bike and rides through the night, shouting polar bear's name into the air. Whenever he catches sight of something white, it sparks another memory of his friend, and he breaks down in tears again. Days later, Grizzly storms into Polar Bear Cafe and declares to Panda and Sasako that he intends to take over the cafe because he was Polar Bear's best friend. But just then, Polar Bear himself walks into the cafe, leaving Grizzly stunned. In disbelief, he stares at his friend, trying to grasp how he is still alive. The truth hits him only when the otter returns once again to eat the polar bear-shaped recipe. Furious, Grizzly grabs the otter and demands an explanation. Realizing he has been messoled all along, he finally sits down and tries the dish himself, admitting that it fooled him completely. Here is a guy in the town walking down the hot street. He recalls a terrible experience he had earlier at a Chinese restaurant, and now he hesitates to step into another unfamiliar place. Eventually, he gathers courage and enters Polar Bear Cafe. Sasako greets him warmly, and the guy is stunned to find a polar bear working behind the counter. He remembers hearing rumors that animals lived in this town, but he never expected to see one actually running a cafe. Polar Bear hands him a menu, which surprises him even more. Unsure what to order, he chooses bamboo leaves. When he takes a bite, however, he finds them plain and ordinary, almost disappointing. He wants to spit them out but struggles to decide what to do with the rest. At that moment, Panda walks into the cafe. The guy's face lights up with excitement at the sight of a real panda. Without thinking, he pushes the remaining bamboo leaves toward Panda, who happily accepts. Polar Bear then offers the boy another bamboo dish, adding in his trouble. Soon after, Penguin enters and the guy is amazed again. He is curious to see how a penguin might sit on a stool. But in the distraction of talking with Polar Bear, he misses the moment completely. More animals arrive soon after: mandrill, otter, and llama, filling the seats around him. Suddenly, the guy finds himself surrounded by talking animals, and the situation feels uncomfortable. Just as he decides to leave, Panda stops him, and Penguin observes the bond forming between them. Panda explains that the guy gave him his bamboo leaves, smiling warmly. The guy feels touched by the gesture, and his uneasiness fades. Before he leaves, Sasako kindly hands him some bamboo to take home, making his visit end on a pleasant note. Later, as night falls, the guy makes his way to Grizzly Cafe. But the atmosphere here is starkly different. Instead of the friendly animals at Polar Bear Cafe, he finds the place filled with rough, intimidating creatures. The mood is tense, the animals look dangerous, and the boy feels his heart pound in fear. At Polar Bear Cafe, where Polar Bear, Panda, and Penguin are preparing for a camping trip, Panda admits he has never experienced camping before, so Polar Bear explains the basics, sleeping on the ground in the dark. Penguin explains further that it's all about pitching the camp, enjoying food, and stargazing. Polar Bear reminds them that Grizzly will be joining the trip as well. Penguin struggles to recall him, until Polar Bear points out he is the same bear who appeared during the wedding in the cafe's yard. Just then, Grizzly arrives, immediately sizing up the group. He notices Panda's presence with curiosity, then teases Penguin for being smaller than the bears. Penguin feels insulted, but Panda reassures him and eases the tension. The group finally heads off to the campsite. Upon arrival, Grizzly takes charge and insists they must set up the camp before nightfall. When he notices Panda and Polar Bear lounging around, he grows irritated and stresses that pitching the tent is the first priority. Polar Bear asks everyone's roles, and Grizzly outlines the plan first. They will set up the camp together. After that, Polar Bear will handle the fire, Grizzly will cook, Penguin will prepare rice, and Panda will help wherever needed. Panda tries to take the initiative by laying the folded tent flat on the ground, proudly claiming the job is complete. Grizzly snaps at him, and the group eventually works together to pitch it properly. However, when they go inside, it collapses under their size and breaks apart. Fortunately, Polar Bear reveals he has brought along a backup tent. Once the tent problem is resolved, Grizzly begins preparing food. But trouble quickly follows. Panda and Polar Bear interfere, attempting to throw in bamboo grass and fish, much to Grizzly's frustration. Meanwhile, Penguin burns the rice and apologizes. To save the situation, Polar Bear pulls out some flour, and Grizzly and Penguin decide to make naan instead. The group finally shares a warm meal around the fire and enjoys the moment. Later that night, they split into pairs for sleeping arrangements. Panda and Polar Bear share one tent peacefully, while Grizzly and Penguin share another. Inside, Grizzly and Penguin begin drinking together. Before long, both of them get drunk, stumble out of the tent, and create a noisy scene before passing out outside. Polar Bear and Panda step out to check on them, finding the two sprawled on the ground. They quietly remark how troublesome the pair is, but when Grizzly and Penguin overhear, even in their drunken state, they flare up in mock anger at the comment. The camping adventure fades out, and the next day, back at Polar Bear Cafe, Panda receives a bouquet of flowers sent by Hayashi. But instead of being touched, he looks annoyed. Around the same time, the focus turns to Hayashi's flower shop. A high school girl who secretly admires Hayashi comes in, hoping to talk to him. However, her courage falters and she prepares to leave. Just before she exits, Hayashi notices a panda keychain hanging from her bag. Intrigued, he suddenly invites her to go out together. The girl thinks of this invitation as a romantic date and excitedly agrees. They end up at the zoo, strolling side by side. While there, the girl carefully asks him about his love life. Hayashi admits there is someone he often thinks about, though he is vague about the details. The girl wonders about the age difference, but Hayashi dismisses it, saying he never really considers such things. He casually mentions he prefers black and white, which the girl misinterprets as an attraction to her school uniform. She blushes and assumes Hayashi has a uniform fetish. Her assumptions quickly collapse when Hayashi reveals the truth. He is passionately in love with Panda. Shocked, the girl listens as Hayashi gushes about how cute Panda is, even more so than the full-time panda at the zoo. Wanting to stay close to Hayashi, she pretends to agree, playing along with his admiration. But as the day wears on, Hayashi never strays from his obsession. By evening, the girl feels drained. Hayashi talks endlessly about Panda, even as the zoo closes around them. Just as the girl thinks she can escape, Hayashi proposes they continue elsewhere. Realizing there is no hope for her romantic dream, she hands him her panda keychain as a farewell gift and quietly walks away, saying goodbye to her love. Back at the Polar Bear Cafe, Panda comes back from work exhausted. He sits down with Polar Bear and Penguin, slumping in relief. Thanks for watching. Check out this next video, and remember to subscribe and zap.